Well, it's Wednesday the 4th of May, day before the Welsh Assembly elections, and last, on the 20th of April, South Wales Echo had an article on the flats down in Loudoun Square owned by the council. That's that one over there, and that's the private accommodation over there. I'll catch that in a moment to come in. And the residents saying we can't afford these charges, because what the article's about is the service charges for the flats being $200 a month. And I found it kind of ironic that this article was run by that paper, given my public question. Oops, I got a tilt. And earlier in April, and so I'd done some figuring out. These people can't afford these charges. I've done some figuring out. The 15 million that Cardiff County Council are going to give the Assembly, they're saying they're getting 9.6 million back. So their difference is, oh, we're only giving them 5 million. I'm saying that if it was transferred to Housing Association, they'd still have the 15 million, plus they'd have the 9.6 million by the Welsh Assembly Government, which would mean that the account would be up 24 million. 24 million it would be up. Okay, these people in this place here are paying $200 a month service charge. How come their rents aren't covering that? You know? I mean, look at all those flats there. How many rentals are they getting out of that place there? And why aren't their rentals paying for these service charges? I mean, how many security guards do they have on the door? Don't know. 1, 2, 3 maybe? On rotating shifts? Surely all the rent monies from that would afford to pay that. And then when Mrs. Woodman, this is Mrs. Woodman's response to my query, which is not all of it, and I wonder why the Echo hadn't published my real public question and my real supplementary question, and why the Human Rights Commission aren't looking into it. Excuse me, Cardiff County Council, you're violating Human Rights Act legislation by not allowing people to ask personal questions. That's one issue. Police Constable Chief Peter Vaughan, sir, why aren't they doing that on my behalf? More discrimination, crazy Dave? Let's think so. So when Mrs. Woodman says, where is it by? This administration is opposed to stock transfer because we recognise the importance of retaining rather than relinquishing democratic control of this city's public housing stock by elected councillors who can best represent the interests of local people and ensure that tenants are supported by a range of other key public services provided by the council. I don't think she's doing it on behalf of those tenants there, Dave, do you? No, sir, she's not. And she's not doing it on behalf of this tenant here who's been living in this tenancy that is a property that does not conform to minimum building standard regulations. How many times do I have to say that, Mr. Cowan Jones, Mr. Uriah Wynne Jones? How often do I have to say that this property does not conform to minimum building standard regulations? Why did they make building standard regulations, Crazy Dave? They made building standard regulations so people wouldn't have to put up with dimwit assholes who were quite satisfied living in substandard homes. That's why they made minimum building standard regulations. And this property hasn't conformed to it for 10 years that I've been, you have a requirement to make this property up to and above the minimum building standard regulations for renting a property, Cardiff County Council. And you haven't done it in 10 years. You know I've been a victim of harassment, intimidation, threats of violence, etc., etc., add in for friggin' item. And still nothing done. And that's not discrimination on the Equality Human Rights Commission. Well, that's fraud. £24 million a year fraud. Chief Constable, I'm making a complaint. The legislation that allows that fraud to carry on means that council tenants are the least. No other social landlord is paying the Welsh Assembly Government that kind of money. None. In fact, probably the 5 million is going to pay for other social landlords to get money off the Welsh Assembly Government in order to do up their properties to some kind of 2011 standard. That's probably what's occurring with that 5 million. Okay, council tenants just being used as a vehicle for like this kind of charge. And Mrs. Woodman's satisfied. Well, she's not struggling to pay, though. She's not in arrears to the council for £900, which one of those tenants are, with the likelihood that they're going to lose their tenancy, going to have to be shunted elsewhere. I mean, they ought to be paying people to live in that kind of property, shouldn't they? Look at it. Who wants to live on the top of there? Nice view, probably, Crazy Dave? Lovely view, probably. Yeah, lovely view. But I mean, look at it. Boxed up. That gotta be, per acre of ground space, the most highest paying community charge spot in the whole of Cardiff. Hasn't it, Mrs. Woodman? I mean, look at all those community charges you're getting out of that floor space of land, and you're making those people pay a £200 a month service charge. It's incredible, isn't it, Crazy Dave? I mean, nowhere else in Cardiff is going to be collecting the kind of community charge that that place is collecting, and yet you're making those people pay an extra £200 a month. Why isn't it included in the rent? So that maybe if the people are on is supposed to be the most deprived part of Wales, or Cardiff at least, you know, poor people, why ain't it all getting paid for by the state? Makes you wonder. So, people in Loudoun Square, if I was you, tomorrow I'd all vote no tar, which means none of the above. Just scrub through the ballot. Just scrub through it like that. Get a red pen, get a bright coloured pen, whatever, and just go, psh. No thank you very much. And I hope Mr. Edmonds might investigate that and start asking council tenants, are you really being served by your council? Are you really happy that they've got democratic control over your tenancies when they're doing this kind of rip-off? Well, are you really satisfied with that? 24 million. If it was any other if it was any other social landlord, there'd be 24 million more in the account than there is currently. And that's a scam. 24 million. Sure would pay for them people to have their security and everything, Crazy Dave, wouldn't it? It surely would. So they wouldn't be able to not afford these charges because they wouldn't be having them. Look at it. I mean, look how many people live there, how many community charges there, Dave. Yeah, and Karen Jones, BBC, don't want to talk about that though, do they? Oh no, don't want to talk about a tenant who's been protesting for 10 years, well, near enough, writing letters for 10 years, about a substandard Cardiff County Council tenancy. Do you BBC trust? No, you don't. Impartiality, check out my demonstrations outside of Office Assembly government that have never been covered by the BBC, and that's impartial. You're having a giraffe, aren't you? Yes. So there we go. Pity the echo weren't down there when you were getting chucked out of the council meeting. Ain't it Crazy Dave? Yeah, sure is a pity, Mr. Edmonds, that there were no reporters down that meeting in there. Or was there? Or did they fail to comment? Oh, do you want a copy? You know, I sent you the copy of my supplementary question. Human equality, human rights. People, you're aiding and abetting criminal negligence. You're also aiding and abetting Cardiff County Council in violating Human Rights Act legislation, which means that I should be able to ask a personal question, because my issue is a personal issue that is not being dealt with by any of the unelected officials or elected officials of Cardiff County Council. I'd like to be able to go into the next Adult Services and Communities or Scrutiny Committee and ask Mr. Ralph Cook, the chairman there, when this time he's aware of the rules and aware that 15 minutes ought to be given over at the start of each adult scrutiny committee meeting, that the members of the public are allowed to address the committee. And I'd like to ask him for an investigation into the means and whatnots of why Mr. Michael Murphy did not offer to provide a social worker without me having to go for a psychiatric assessment for a social worker. I'd like that answered, because that's another fixed procedure that they claim that they're opposed to, when in actual fact, Chief Constable, they run their organisation on fixed procedures detrimental to the health and well-being of either its tenants or other people in the city. 24 million being ripped off of that account. How many properties would that buy on the market, Crazy Dave? Quite a few, wouldn't they, Mr. Carwyn Jones? But then again, Jason Mohammed of BBC's phone-in refuses to ask you that kind of question now, doesn't he? And the BBC refuse to ask you those kind of questions in other shows, don't they, Mr. Carwyn Jones? Mr. Jonathan Morgan, the Electoral Commission has not responded to my tweet saying Julie Morgan is an unfit, proper person to run for an election in the Welsh Assembly, given her prejudice towards dealing with the issues surrounding this tenancy. Aren't you, Mrs. Morgan? The proof is in my blogs. Isn't it, Crazy Dave? Yes, it is. So anyway, people, enough of the chat. Vote no tar. Tomorrow. Vote no tar on May the 5th. Vote no tar in any future elections that come around. AV. What's AV, Dave? It's a compromise nothing thing which is wasting public money. If they want proportional representation, get proportional representation. It's a farce. Wasting government money. All this back and forth money, fiddle, Chief Constable, it's a scam.